I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. You may have 2 to 3 months to live. Go home and be at peace with your family and get your affairs in order. I looked to my right thinking somebody left a door open and the cold air is coming through. And I look down there and the doors are shut. So I said, this is kind of strange. And I come back to my left and I'm startled and I jump and there's somebody standing here. And I think it's a doctor or a nurse because I'm in the recovery room of a hospital. The
Right.
person standing here reaches out and physically touches my shoulder. When his hand touched my shoulder, in my head it says, you're in the presence of Jesus. She's smiling from ear to ear. And I said, okay, Dr. Ahmad, what's going on? And she says, Chuck, I've never seen anything like this, and I've studied cancer all over the world. She said, your journey's not of medicine, it's miraculous. She says, the scans, I've studied them the last couple of days. No cancer is showing up whatsoever in your scans. That I was told 3 months earlier that I had 3 months to live and I had cancer in 90% of the bones in my body. And you're telling me now it's all gone? And she says, and something very interesting that's really blowing my mind is your bones are so clean, you couldn't tell they were ever broken.
Welcome, Chuck Keels. I'm so excited to finally meet you because I've heard so much about you already. I'm thankful for God's providential hand about how we connected. So I first heard about you from Matthew. He had this amazing story, which we'll get to later, where he first met you and you literally changed his life. And then just a few weeks ago, I didn't know this person very well at all. We were just stacking chairs at our homeschool group and we were talking about miracles and stuff like that. And I was sharing a story that I'd heard from someone else. And she said, oh, that totally reminds me of our friends Chuck and Hannah. And you absolutely have to reach out to this guy. But I didn't realize they're both talking about the same person. So when I got home, I looked up the name she gave me, and then I realized, I was like, I have been on this website before. It was your getupandlive.org, and I remembered seeing Hannah's picture with wings. Texted Matthew right away saying, do you know this person? And he's like, yeah, he was the guy who changed my life. And I was like, okay. You are the infamous Chuck who they were both talking about. So here we are. So that's how I know it was providential timing, because when these things happen and they keep coming back, I've learned to stop ignoring them.
Yeah, but
So, yeah.
sometimes as humans, we need that confirmation. So there's nothing wrong with that.
And those are some of my most favorite confirmations. Yeah, there are no coincidences. And that was the other thing they told me. They're like, you have to meet Chuck because he is just so overflowing with joy and love for people. And, we know you've been through a lot, but I think a lot of that is the Holy Spirit that's filling you up and continuously filling you up so that you can pour out for others who desperately need it. Because I think that's a supernatural trait to be able to do that for people. I was just really thankful that you so generously said yes to sharing your story of healing and hope and your mission to help other people on their really difficult cancer journeys. It was years ago when your life was changed in an instant.
So basically, just like everybody else, you're living your life. I had my own business. I was a landscape designer and installer, so I dealt with landscaping and swimming pools. So just another guy, just doing what he does, and 2 boys, single dad. All this stuff's gone well. And there was some things in my life that I kind of felt like there was something missing, but really couldn't nail it down. So I was just living my life. And May 16th in 2015 was a huge turn the corner of my life. And what I mean by that is something that stopped me in my tracks was a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. I was, happy guy. Like I said, a little lost in some areas in life, and I couldn't really figure out where that loss was. But basically, out in Gilbert, Arizona, I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. The cancer I let go for way too long, even though I felt like something was going on in my body. I kept putting it off, and by the time I got into Gilbert Mercy Hospital on an evening to get some scans and tests and see if they can tell me what's going on with my body, at that time is when they said it's all cancer related, and you let it go for so long that it's gotten out of the prostate and into the bone marrow and the lymph nodes because cancer goes to where it's fed. And at that time, they said, Chuck, there's nothing the medical industry can do because it's so bad. And they said, you may have 2 to 3 months to live. Go home and be at peace with your family and get your affairs in order. So I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and told there was no treatment or anything they could do about it. And so it was like going from bad to worse to worse to worse to worse right after another. And so at that time, I basically just said, I told my boys, we're gonna pack up and head back to Ohio where my family's at. And what I was thinking was, I'm melting away. By this time, I'm down almost 40 pounds, and I didn't have 40 pounds to lose. My body was melting away. I was dying. And so what I was really thinking was I need to get my boys back to Ohio so my family can take care of them once I'm not here, once I'm gone. So that all took place. We made that plan to make a move back. When you make a plan like that, that's really abrupt. We ended up that week giving away everything we owned. We gave away all of our furniture, our big screen TVs. We gave everything away because you don't move that stuff across the country if you have 3 months to live. And so gave everything away and was on our way to the airport. And I have I didn't have a fall. I had something happen that caused me to fall and couldn't get up and realized what had happened was my back, because of the damage the cancer was causing in all of the bones, they no longer could hold me up and collapsed in 2 places. So I had a double compression fracture happen on the way to the airport as we were supposed to be leaving town that day, and I was rushed by ambulance um, to a close hospital to that area, which is called John C. Lincoln Hospital. Never heard of it before, didn't know anything about it. And at that point, what happened at John C. Lincoln Hospital was they start running scans and tests, and they pretty much came back and said, "We want to fight this." And I said, "Well, out in Gilbert, they put me on hospice care and said there's nothing they can do about it because it's so bad in my body." And they said, "Well, we want to fight this. We want to go at it. We think we can get on top of this. Well, what's the plan?" And they said, two surgeries tomorrow. We're going to stop your testosterone with one surgery. We're going to put a port in your body, which is a little device that goes under the skin that they can plug into and give you chemotherapy. So they figured if they could stop the testosterone production, which is the feeding of the cancer, and then put a port in and start chemotherapy, if they could stop feeding it and start killing it, that was what was gonna save my life. And I was excited because it was the first time I heard a game plan, in the last couple of months, because everything else was go home and melt away. And so I was excited to actually have a game plan. I said, "Let's go. Let's go." So the next day, I was wheeled into the surgical area and prepped for surgery. And remember, all the way up to the point where they actually administered anesthesia in my IV to knock me out for the surgeries. And the next time I wake up, it's 2 hours later, and I'm in the recovery room at John C. Lincoln Hospital. And the nurses saw that I was awake and brought me water and said my family was upstairs waiting for me. And the 2 doctors that did the surgeries wanted to speak to me. So the doctors came in and they said, "Hey, We just want to talk to you a little bit. The surgeries went perfectly. And we also want to follow up with you once you leave the hospital. So now I'm a little more excited because now we even have a team fighting together. And that's even, like, wow, come on, let's go. Let's go. A fight's a fight. And so basically I'm just laying there until I get the okay to take me upstairs. And as I'm laying there, the entire room turns weird cold. And
Really?
so the first thing I look to my right, thinking somebody left the door open and the cold air is coming through. And I look down there and the doors are shut. So I said, this is kind of strange. And I come back to my left and I'm startled and I jump and there's somebody standing here. And I think it's a doctor or a nurse because I'm in the recovery room of a hospital. The
Right.
person standing here reaches out and physically touches my shoulder. When his hand touched my shoulder, in my head it says, you're in the presence of Jesus.
Wow.
I'm completely flipping out. I look up again. I look up again and he's gone.
Wow.
So you're telling me 3 seconds of my life I was in the presence of Jesus? And this I grew up in a Christian family going to church and walked away from it as an adult and had not been to church in 15 years. So, not the most likely candidate for Jesus to show up. And what just happened? What did I see and why me? And there's a lot of detail to the story that ended up being 3 books that are published now. High on Chuck is about my story. And what happened was over the next few months, I even did rounds of chemo because that's what the doctors told me was necessary. So I started that. They do a round of scans to see where this is at. Is it getting better, getting worse? Should we change the treatment plan? And my doctor's from Pakistan. And when I walk into her office, she's smiling from ear to ear. And I said, okay, Dr. Ahmad, what's going on? And she says, Chuck, I've never seen anything like this. And I've studied cancer all over the world. She said, your journey's not of medicine, it's miraculous. She says, the scans, I've studied them the last couple of days. No cancer is showing up whatsoever in your scans. That I was told 3 months earlier that I had 3 months to live and I had cancer in 90% of the bones in my body. And you're telling me now it's all gone? And, and she says, and something very interesting that's really blowing my mind is your bones are so clean, we couldn't tell they were ever broken.
That's incredible. Especially, I've seen the pictures of your scans online, and your bone was, like, deteriorated.
It was breaking away. It was fragile. It was deteriorating. And my doctors said that patients of hers have ended up having so many breaks that they're in a nursing home. And so that's what she was worried about because that's where the direction I was going. And now you're telling me the cancer's gone and the bones are clean?
It's like the bones actually regenerated themselves. Chemo and everything else, that wouldn't have recreated bone, I would think. I'm not a doctor, but that seems pretty unlikely.
Well, actually, it's exactly opposite. Chemotherapy and the chemicals in chemotherapy deteriorate and harm the bones even more. So there's no explanation. And that night in the bed, that night at the hospital in the bed, I'm laying there and I'm trying to figure this out. And my brain's going 100 miles an hour and I can't sleep. And I didn't turn off my lights and I didn't wash my face. And I'm like, what just happened? And I remember as a young man in church with my family, I remember hearing, if the doctors say we can't explain this, that's called a miracle.
Yeah.
I'm laying there in bed thinking about all this. And I said, God, this was you. This was you. There's no other explanation. This has to be you. And I had a conversation with God laying in bed that night because I knew he'd been trying to get my attention my entire life. And I bumped
Mm.
my head into the wall. years trying to do Chuck's plan, trying to do my own plan.
Mhm. Control.
And was and at 50 years old, running my own business, raising 2 boys, went through crazy dating and relationships and train wrecks of me being broken, trying to date somebody else that was broken, and nobody knew Jesus, and it was just train wreck after train wreck. And so I also said at that point, laying in that bed at night, I'm exhausted. I know something was missing in my life and I didn't know what it was. And I never imagined in a million years, and I should have known this as a young man, but I didn't. And I ignored it, that what was missing in my life was a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Wow. So when you were in the hospital, did you tell people what happened? Like, did you tell your boys and the nurses and your doctor? Did you tell them what you experienced?
Everybody around me, everybody, including my friends on social media that were watching me, I already made the announcement that I'm diagnosed with cancer. I have 3 months to live. So all these people are watching this. Everybody around me, I couldn't shut up about it. I'm like, I mean, I'm a high energy guy anyway. So throw in a mind blowing miracle and then try to shut me up. It's impossible. So the doctors, the nurses, it ended up being on TV. It ended up being on CBS, NBC, and Fox. All did articles on this. It spread the countryside. I got calls from different places. I ended up doing an interview on something called the 700 Club, which is a worldwide Christian broadcasting network. I was watching this happen, and I was also trying to figure out what was going on. And I'm like, God, what is your plan with this? And as this young man that was lost as a Christian started to get closer and closer to Jesus and started to get deeper and deeper in the Bible and started to mold myself into somebody that I wasn't just 6 months or a year ago, and my life completely turned around and opened up into something that to this day I still can't explain it or I can't believe it myself. From an old farm boy in Ohio to somebody now that's traveling the world to do this, to spread the news and to tell the story and to love on cancer people, to do this and to even have opportunities to speak on stage at churches, businesses, and retreats. And I've spoke on stage with over 3,000 people, and I'm pinching myself. I'm like, God, this is your plan for me. I'm blown
That's
away.
incredible.
He orchestrated it a little by little each day. And what God told me at the very beginning was, I said, I want to tell everybody, churches and hospitals and prisons. And God said, no, you're going to talk to one person at a time. And I said, no, I want to tell everybody. And God says, no, you're going to tell one person at a time. And what I didn't know then that I know now is I didn't have the capacity to do what I'm doing now. I had to learn the power of my own story. I had to learn how to tell the story. I had to learn how to read somebody that I'm telling the story to in the park or at the grocery store or sitting in the audience of a speaking event, read that and understand the Holy Spirit's on them. The Holy Spirit is lighting this up right now. And as I've matured into all of this and given the glory to God, it's matured into something that I can't even believe, which is a cancer foundation and a cancer ministry.
Wow, that's incredible. Have you noticed that you have any new giftings after having this experience?
What I noticed is the gifting that I was given as a young man, I used it the wrong way. Now I learned how to use it properly in order to give God the glory and help more people. I always had the gifts that He gave me and maybe used them in the wrong way, or not maybe, but definitely used them in the wrong way as a young man. But now I'm using those gifts to bring more people to Him.
Wow. So they were there the whole time.
I had times in my life where I heard a voice and I was like, oh, it's just me thinking that. I had no idea that the voice could actually be God.
That's another question people often have, like when we have those feelings or those thoughts, you've probably learned how to discern whether it's your own thought or God. What is your experience about telling the difference with that now?
So basically, after the cancer diagnosis and the broken back, I still wasn't sure what would happen, even though I knew I was tapped on the shoulder. I still didn't know what happened. That's how I ended up doing chemo even after that. But I started having some mind blowing conversations with God. And a lot of times that was outside of a hospital, walking around, just like having a conversation with myself and getting downloads that was something I wasn't thinking about. And then I started going, oh my gosh, God's telling me this. God's pointing me in this direction. God's telling me that. And it's so clear and so cool that Hannah, my wife, said, you should write a book about God told you this. For a perfect example, after losing a couple of landscaping contracts, um, I was I was furious and was counting the money and was already making plans in my budget to buy a new truck and all this stuff. Lost the contracts, and God told me I'm already rich, and I had no idea what that meant. And it took two
You're like,
years for
"What?"
sales guy, this sales guy that's been a hustler his entire life to take money off the table and let God orchestrate it through God's economy. God's got me. He's going to take care of me if I'm doing his will and what he's asking me to do. And so, yeah, the downloads and the clear messages are absolutely incredible. And people get them in all different ways. I'll even talk to somebody that'll say, I pray and I talk to God, but I don't get messages back from him. And I'll say, and he just put you and me together. So it may not be the way that they think is possible.
Yeah, that's interesting because it is very, it is very subtle to be able to hear that and to not, push it off, you
It
know?
could be as small as on the way to work, a little old lady was going very slow across the walkway. So you sat there, missed the light, had to sit there for another 5 minutes, and then you went to work and something happened that was so unbelievable. And you would never go back and say, 30 minutes ago, I was stuck at a light. And now it put me right here at this perfect time, at the perfect place in front of the person that God wanted me to talk to. You would never relate the all of the things that happened right up to that point, including me and a friend saying, we're going to go to a place and we're going to hold up signs saying free hugs and free prayers. And somebody like Matthew walks out that day. And that event, not only did it touch his life, but it touched mine as well.
So since we're talking about that, I'll probably have him share his side of the story too soon because he's been wanting to do that. But all I heard was that he opened the door from his apartment and there you were. Like, were you washing feet? He said something about
So
feet.
basically, I think you could even, I think I have one of the signs here. Here's the signs we had that day.
Free prayers, free hugs, coach and
So
counseling.
we went with these signs, and on the way to the location that we decided we were going to do this at, God says in my head, stop and get some water. And I stopped and got 2 gallons of water and a big plastic tub. I had no idea what the game plan was. And I always thought it would be so cool to wash somebody's feet. I always thought that, but I've never done it before. And God says, get a tub and get some water. And I'm like, ooh, this is cool. So basically we had made a plan to go out to a location and just hold up signs and say free hugs and say free prayers. And the just starting to do this already was absolutely incredible because of some of the people that stopped and we hugged. A lady asked for a prayer, and then she told us that that morning her husband left her and she was in tears. So we were out there like, wow, we're really making a difference. And on the way to the event, God says to stop and get water and a tub. And I'm thinking about it and I'm like, okay, um, I always wanted to wash somebody's feet. I thought that would be the coolest thing. And so all of a sudden, I'm thinking, maybe we're going to get to wash somebody's feet. So we go out there, we're hugging people, we're praying with people. And I turn around and there's a young man standing there and he's watching us and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And I had a shirt on, and he was looking at my shirt and it had some Bible phrases on it. And he said, "I'm going through an interesting situation, and I really went from not knowing Jesus my entire life to basically surrendering to Jesus right now, and my family's not supporting me." And I looked at him and I said, "Could I have the honor to wash your feet?" And he said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No." And he sat down and took his shoes off, and I poured water over his feet and prayed while I washed his feet. And the experience for him um, was just nothing short of mind blowing. Just like, this doesn't happen every day. But the experience for me to be the guy on the side where I think I'm giving the blessing, but I'm getting the blessing back to me 10 times fold.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely doesn't happen every day, and that was in Scottsdale, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't happen every day in Scottsdale. Wow, that's incredible.
It's people stepping out there, blind faith, and just saying, "Hey, we're gonna bless somebody today." And that's what the feeling was gonna be like, was we're gonna bless somebody today. But like I said, the blessing came back to us.
It's a very intimate act to touch someone's feet,
Absolutely.
especially a
Absolutely.
stranger.
Well, you know what's the coolest thing is Jesus being Jesus, but still saying, "I'm here to serve," wash all of his followers' feet.
Exactly. Yeah, it was actually funny timing. This is off topic a little bit, but me and some friends went over to a dear friend's house this weekend. She brought out, like, a foot bath, and it was one of those, like, detoxifying foot bath things where the water gets, like, super gnarly. So here we were taking turns for 30 minutes with this, like, crazy tub that she had, and I couldn't help but think about our conversation coming up and you, and I told them all about our conversation we were gonna have today. After we took our feet out of this disgusting water, she, like, poured water over our feet and, like, dried them off and then put on, like, an olive oil lotion and, like, rubbed our feet. That's never happened to me before, but the whole time I was like, "This is so ironic." Anyway, it was just beautiful.
It's an intimate act. It's not normal, and it's so cool that I could be the guy that was servicing and giving that to somebody else.
Right, it's compassion. We weren't strangers, but for you to do that for a stranger, that is a level of loving your neighbor and compassion that I don't think most people are thinking about in their busy, hectic life. Another side note, because I was looking over your social media and stuff, and I noticed the tattoo on your hand.
There's been gifts and there's been talents that I've acquired that God gave me as a young man, but this energy level that I have is a little bit wild at times. And so what's happened is I've gotten myself into trouble by not slowing down and thinking the situation. And so what happened was I put a tattoo on my hand that actually says Psalms 46:10. And Psalms 46:10 states, "Be still and know I am God." So in all of the situations where I'm going 100 miles an hour and I'm doing things that I may necessarily maybe shouldn't be doing, now I slow down and be still and know he is God. So that's helped me tremendously, tremendously in my journey called life. Another Bible phrase that I love, it might be my next tattoo, is James 1:19. And James 1:19 is a life changer for me because it states to be quick to think, but slow to speak and slow to anger. And that's a life changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that because, well, first of all, the important thing about being still, we've got our own agenda and our own busyness and everything else. It's very hard to hear God when we're just stressed and running amok and, our normal life. Being still and knowing that he is God it's when we hear him, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always say prayer is when you are um talking to God and maybe saying, "Hey, I've got a situation here," or "I've got a health situation," or whatever it is. Prayer is when you're talking to God, but meditation is when you're listening to God and answers and guidance from Him.
So I had this plaque. We were going through a difficult time, and actually, someone on the phone at Samaritan Ministries actually mailed this to our house, and I was so moved by just that level of care. So when I saw your tattoo, I was just like, "That is so sweet." I'm just gonna put it
Wow.
down. Yeah. Anyway, actually, speaking of prayer, so when people are facing a diagnosis, I went through this too. My mom had cancer as well. There's a lot of opinions out there in the world, in different churches and everything else that say, if you have enough faith, like when you pray, you're telling God what you expect, right? In Jesus' name, I proclaim that, my loved one is going to be totally healed, all of that. And then, as you know, which we'll talk about in a minute, that doesn't always happen. So when your loved one, doesn't receive the miraculous healing that you were putting all your bold faith into, it's very, very hard. I would imagine really separate you from trusting God, being angry at God, or feeling like you're less than, like, did I not pray well enough? Or was there a seed of disbelief in me that was hidden and I was faking it? Like, do you know what I mean? There's a lot of this pressure to pray right when the stakes are high. Or do we pray with belief and expectation, but with open hands and a humility and a humbleness that says, "Your will be done, God, even if it's not what I want." I was just curious, like, what your thoughts are on that, because I'm sure you've seen it many times.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So basically, there's a lot of religions and people that say you should check the boxes and do it exactly this way. But God never told us that. He never told us there's a right and wrong way. He just wants us to pray. He just wants us to have faith. He just wants us to bring him into the picture and give it all to him. And so in that situation, what we also have to know, and this is kind of a life changer for me, is that God has a plan when we're knitted together in our mother's womb. So, with faith in that plan, is it a plan for someone to heal from their illness, or is this the end of their life on this earth? And so basically, we give it all to Him. But as you stated earlier, you give it all to Him with open hands, with okay, God, whatever it says. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So there's this plan that's already put in place. And so it's up to us to understand that as well. So there's a lot of situations that a lot of people don't understand. And it happens to be on a regular basis because I have a cancer foundation. And so when you have a cancer foundation, you see the end of lives and situations. And you just think that just wasn't fair. And why did that happen? And God had a plan for every single thing to happen that happened. And it could be somebody who it was the end of their life on earth, no matter what age that was, which doesn't seem fair to us. But by us watching them, it brought somebody to him. It brought somebody to him. And it could be just a simple statement of we are not in control of when we come into this world, when we leave this world. It's all up to God. So I want to have a good relationship with him and give him, a thanks for the good things and the bad things in our life because they happen for a reason. So the ability to open up our hands and just say, God, this is all yours. It's all yours. I'm going to give it to you and walk in blind faith. And with my crazy life and this cancer foundation and this cancer ministry, it's something that I am called to do every single day.
And I know it's hard, but it probably fulfills you way more than the landscaping business ever did.
Yeah, I mean, hard days dealing with cancer, but I sleep like a baby every night.
So here's another difficult question. You know, if everything is God's will, we know that God doesn't cause cancer. That's just our broken world, the way our bodies are corrupted, everything else. Like some people might be upset and blame God, right? Like when this was happening to you and Hannah, was there ever a time where you were just angry at God? Did you ever wrestle with God during that time?
I mean, quite a few times, especially the last, week that Hannah's body was shutting down and I was taking care of her and bringing her toothbrush and, sitting her up to eat and all the things that you have to do as a caregiver. And then holding her in my arms when she took her last breath was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. And the next day was walking without her. I was walking my dogs and I said, God, what just happened? Hannah had passed away after 3 years of ups and downs with cancer and chemos and radiations and all the above. And finally was just so exhausted that she went to be with Jesus. And I'm walking the dogs and I said, what just happened? God, what just happened? I was praying over her body 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. I was putting oils on her head. I was putting oils on her spine. What just happened? And I hear God and he says, I told him, I prayed over healing from head to toe, complete healing over her body. And what I heard from God was, I gave her complete healing, just not as you wanted as a human. So the complete healing is she's no longer with cancer. She's no longer in pain. She's dancing in the arms of Jesus for eternity. But as humans, we don't want it that way. We don't understand that. Why did that happen? But when I think about it, I'm jealous. I'm the one still here grieving and going through the heartache of losing my wife and my best friend, and she's in no pain in heaven. So we have to actually think about it the opposite way and think we're the ones here struggling through this crazy world and this crazy life until it's all said and done. And God calls us home, and we are in His presence for eternity. And people don't even think about eternity anymore. They think about what's going on right now in their bank account or who they're dating. And the next thing you know is like they meet somebody like me and they said, well, what you have to understand is we're only on this life for such a short little time, but you're in eternity with God for the rest of your life. So let's work on that. Let's start working on that now.
It's incredible. It's also a mercy. for that suffering to stop, right? As hard as it is to say goodbye this side of heaven, it's very hard to watch someone suffer. So that's the kind of God that we have, right? That is compassionate and merciful and will make that person whole. And there will be no more tears, no more suffering. But as you said, it's really hard for us who are left behind.
And what I saw the last couple months or the next couple months after she passed away was I saw millions of people, that were heartbroken because Hannah passed away. And what happened in that situation was I seen people even come to Jesus because they saw Hannah praising God through the storm.
And that's a very difficult thing to do, especially given everything that she went through. Well, except for Jesus, where you'd be able to find that strength to persevere during all of those fractures. I mean, all the lesions, everything else. I mean, that without Jesus, I don't know how people could cope.
I don't know where they go. I don't know where they go at that time. I know that we were in prayer. We had lots of people in prayer around us, and that prayer gave us comfort and peace.
Was it a tangible peace? Like, as they say, the peace that surpasses all understanding, like a peace that you could feel?
Absolutely. 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 We were going through cancer. I'd been through stage 4 cancer, and now here's Hannah going through cancer. And people around us were watching us and they're like, you both deal with stage 4 cancer. You got a smile on your face. How can that be?
It's impossible, right? On an
Yeah,
earthly understanding, that is impossible.
absolutely. But Jesus gave us so much joy in our hearts that it became possible.
So I know we're talking about Anna, but let's back up just a little bit. So how did you meet? Were you already healed at that point?
I was already healed at that point, and I was still doing design and landscaping work here in Los Angeles. And but I was getting a lot of calls to speak on stage, and I had wrote my book about my miraculous healing called Hi, I'm Chuck, and that was launched. And so I see my life changing slowly. And my cousin, she actually had a close friend who was going through stage 4 cancer. And when they were hanging out one day, said, I can't believe I never introduced you to my cousin Chuck. He survived end stage cancer and he's a published author. You should meet him with everything you're going through. And so she sets us up and we meet and become buddies and friends. And she mentioned she wants to write a book too. And I said, I can help you do that. I just finished my first book. And so, so many cool things happened. And then over coffee one day, uh, she says, "Who's going to want to date me now? Stage 4 cancer." And I'm looking at her, and she's just absolutely beaming, glowing with the light of Jesus Christ,
So
and
beautiful.
and just so beautiful. And I said, I hope I'm on that list. I hope I'm on the list of people, and so not only was I on the list, but I was on the top of the list. And we dated for the next 4 months, got engaged, and got married.
That is so
And
beautiful.
it was nothing short of a God's orchestration every step of the way. The dating, the courting, the dating, the marriage, the people that were in or that were around us through the marriage. We come back from our honeymoon and I'm starting to design landscaping projects, and the phone would ring and somebody would say, "Hey, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Do you have a minute?" And I would stop everything and I would talk to him for an hour or so. And every time I hung up the phone, Hannah looked at me. She says, "I cannot believe this is what you do." And she says, when the word cancer comes up, you stop everything." And I said, "Well, I know so much about it now, so I'm going to help as many people as I can." And she says, God God wants us to start a cancer foundation.
Yeah.
And I said,
And you
I don't know anything
did.
about that. And we did. We launched Living Hope Cancer Foundation in 2020. And we wanted to be a positive mindset coaching place, learn about prayer, learn about love, learn about nutrition, learn about moving your body and staying active. And little did we know that the world was in need of a positive mindset foundation that encouraged people, no matter what they're going through and no matter what their challenges are, to overcome that, get up and live every day, and not only improve our lives through prayer, love, nutrition, and physical, but that's the things we started coaching and teaching, to the point where everything that we started saying had get up and live,
Mhm.
get
The
up and live.
tattoo. Mhm. I love it.
My RV out there, get up and live. We said get up and live so many times every day. And it went from the physical get up and live for cancer patients to get out of bed and get off the couch, to actually get up and live mentally and get your mind into this game, because it has trouble healing the body without the mind already into that zone. And so as we could get them to heal physically, mentally, they also were able to heal spiritually and get them closer to Christ. And because of that, because of those things, we've seen not only people's lifestyle change and being able to really appreciate life, even going through a cancer journey, but we also have seen their lives extended, and the doctors can't understand what's going on. And my buddy that's a surgeon said, you're getting people to fight. You're getting their brains to send out signals to the body to identify foreign things and fight. And so when you get people into the fight mode, um, along with love and prayer and nutrition, um, the body starts to follow. And it's pretty cool to watch.
That's incredible. The power of mindset is absolutely incredible. And also what you're saying about, most people who would get a diagnosis like this, cancer or not, it can be a very dark place without hope and without a positive plan. Um, yeah. And I know on your Facebook live that you did today, it's frustrating, right? A wall of what can be talked about. A medical community, someone comes into the medical field and they just want to help people. And then they find out there's like this like invisible wall that they're not allowed to go through. And that can be a very confusing place. So the fact that you give people hope and optimistic and healthy plans is really badly needed today.
Something you very seldom hear somebody talk about is, what is the chief cause of cancer in the first place? The number one cause in the world of cancer is stress and worry. So think about this. Is it not important to coach positive mindset starting from day one? Positive mindset it's so important, because it might not happen that day where they can turn it on and go, let's go, Chuck, let's fight, let's juice, let's go for a walk. It might take some time, but we start coaching that from day one. And so basically, what's happened now is I've met so many doctors who, well, I've met doctors from all over the world now, and in other countries. They talk about nutrition, and they talk about oils, and they talk about herbs, and they talk about botanical products, but you never hear that here. And why is that? And these doctors that I've talked to, they've walked away from their license because they were told, if you don't stop telling people to juice and to use nutrition, we're going to take your license. And unfortunately, in this country, there's something very big and very powerful going on right now, but we're starting to make a dent in it. And that is the fact that the pharmaceutical industry in this country is very powerful, very powerful. There's a lot
Money
of money
talks.
involved, money talks, and And pharmaceutical can pull a doctor's medical license, even though they went to school for 8+ years to get this license. They could have their license pulled because they're talking about things that weren't approved by the FDA. And unfortunately, when I start talking about natural nutrients like apricot seeds, for $25, you get a bag of apricot seeds that lasts you 6 months for $25. And apricot seeds have all kinds of stuff in them, including B17, which helps the body fight cancer. But for $25, you're talking about a possible serious aid working in the cancer world. When you talk about pharmaceutical and insurance, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, they're not gonna make much money off a $25 bag of apricot seeds.
No, no, they sure won't. They sure won't.
But those chemo drugs, I can't even imagine what the market value of all of that is.
What's the percentage of those chemo drugs working? Those chemo drugs still in your body, and I had chemo. I know what it feels like to be on chemotherapy. It is terrible. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. It burnt the lining of my throat. I lost my hair. I lost 40 pounds. I know what it's like to be affected by that because I didn't know at the time what I know now. And unfortunately, the problem is chemotherapy doesn't know the difference between a healthy cell and a cancer cell. It kills everything, and the doctors hope that it kills the cancer before it kills the patient. But what do you hear these days? Oh, the cancer got him. The cancer got him. And in a lot of situations, it wasn't the cancer, it was the treatment. It was the side effects from the treatment. And Hannah was one of the ones that lost her life because of the side effects from her treatment. Would she have died eventually from the cancer? Maybe. I don't know. There's no way of really knowing. But did she pass away 4 months after brain radiation, and her organs started shutting down one by one? That's exactly what happened. And a friend of mine that's a surgeon told me she didn't die of cancer, she died from the side effects from the treatment. This is what made me more of an advocate about natural things, about knowing more options than just what the doctor's saying. Is it the only option I have is to go get chemo or to go have a surgery and get a part of me cut out? Is that the only option, or are there other options out there? Now we're knowing about them. And you know what? As silly as this sounds, and the people that talk and bash social media is making us smarter.
How so? Because we're able to share information directly with one
Sharing
another?
information on a very rapid basis. Sharing, if you get diagnosed with cancer, whatever your type of cancer they diagnose you with, if you go on social media and type in that type of cancer, you can find 15 support groups of people already dealing with that type of cancer. Start asking questions. Well, what did you do for this? What did you do for that? What should I stay away from? And all of a sudden, we get educated, we get much wiser, and the doctors are standing there going, how do you know this? How do you know this?
The power of shared knowledge and experience. Would you have proceeded with the chemo knowing what you know
So
now?
there's two answers to that question, and I'll tell you why. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have continued and went into the chemo field, but I didn't know that then. But also, the reason why God sent me down a path and had received chemotherapy in my body is because now when I'm coaching thousands of cancer people all over the world, I can talk to them at a much higher level because when they say I got chemo on Monday and I felt terrible all week, and I can say I know exactly how you felt. So God put me through something that I couldn't even believe I did. And now I look back and go, now I know why.
Well, that's how he equipped you, right? So he's the one who can turn beauty from ashes. So he took your ashes and your heartbreak and all of that experience and like refashioned it to be something that would bless other people.
Finding our blessings in the mess is the key to life, is the key to life. Identifying things around you and finding the blessings in the mess, giving God the glory, casting the devil out of your life because he's gonna steal everything, your hope and your joy. But basically, yeah, but that hardship and that struggle is where we grow and where we get smarter and where we get stronger. And there's reasons why we go through every bit of struggle that we've been through in our lives. Look back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and go, oh my gosh, there's no way that I would be doing what I'm doing now if I didn't go through that, learn from it, and get stronger.
By the way, I don't know where that hand is coming from. Thing in the technology is like, "Yeah, yeah, Chuck, okay." That's so funny. It reminds me, I'm taking a Bible study right now, and one of the interesting things that we're learning about is I can't remember the Hebrew word for it, but it's listening for the word in the wilderness. So when we're in the wilderness and we're in the valley, God's got a word for us. So instead of us feeling sorry for ourselves and looking at all the bad things, there's wisdom and there's equipping and there's something amazing that we can only find when we're in the wilderness. You heard your word in the wilderness. And instead of just hearing it, you're actually taking action, which is even more important than hearing the word in the first place. Like if you could have received all of this information and went, I don't know, God. I think I'm just gonna keep with my landscape design, right?
Yeah, and what happened what happened gradually was, not only would I see a situation and then I say, "How would I solve this? How would I get through this? How can I get through this struggle?" I would go through it until I solved the problem, and then God said, "Who else needs to hear this? Turn around and tell 10,000 people." Turn around and tell one person. Turn around and share this with somebody that needs to hear it also. So, it's funny these days because they call somebody like an influencer or a teacher or a coach, but that's what it is knowing that we are problem solvers, but how many people need to hear this also? And that's exactly what he's done with me.
Mm, it's so inspiring. Share about, like, how did you guys decide to take the big RV on the road while you're gonna ride your bike from California to Florida? How did that come about?
The foundation was starting to grow, and then a friend of mine that has brain cancer that I was coaching, he's a avid cyclist, and he said, "Let's, you should do a ride and generate, more awareness to your foundation and raise some money for your foundation." And I was like, "That's a good idea." And I love adventure and challenges, and especially challenging myself physically after stage 4 cancer. And now, what would be like one of the coolest rides you could do, and if what would be cooler than riding from San Diego to St. Augustine, Florida? And so we started planning this, and I started training for it, just riding here in the Phoenix Valley. And Hannah went through some really bad things with her cancer journey, and we didn't get to do a lot of the things that we had planned on doing, to the point where we even thought about canceling the event because
Mm,
it was only 3 or 4 weeks out now and getting closer, and we weren't in position to do a lot of the things that we needed to do. And this was getting closer, and we prayed about it one morning. And I said, "Hannah, I think let's just cancel this and let's just do it in another year or two." And Hannah looked at me and she says, "God told me to trust him. Keep going, trust him." And so what happened was we kept going on, and 2 weeks before the event, we didn't know where we were going to stay as I ride the bike across the country. And we did a speaking event for the Keller Williams real estate agencies, and they bring in people from all over. I think a couple different states in this area, Colorado and California, and here. And it's a kind of a big event. There's a lot of people there and stuff. And so we were invited to be the inspirational speakers on stage. And this is while Hannah was going through that treatment. And so we get on stage and we tell our story, and we said, "We don't even know where we're gonna stay as we're going across the country, but God said, just keep going forward in blind faith. Trust me." And I said, and Hannah had chemotherapy treatment yesterday. And everybody in the place just gave her a standing ovation. And we got a lot of hugs, and we sold a lot of books. and made a lot of new friends, and it was really cool. But the next day, I get a phone call, and it's from a guy, and he says, "I was sitting behind you guys at the event yesterday." And he says, "I couldn't believe your story." And I started looking it up on my phone while you were talking. And I even text my wife to pull this up and start looking at it. And I got home last night and we prayed. And then they called us and said, "We have an RV in storage. You guys are more than welcome to use it for your trip across the country." We were donated the use of an RV. Who does that? We're gonna put 6,000 miles on this RV, 3,000 one way and 3,000 the other way. Who
Mhm.
does that? And I told him that, and he says, I know, but we prayed about it and we're in." And so they donated the use of this RV that we actually Hannah followed me at 15 miles an hour all the way across the country on my bicycle through wind, rain, mountains, you name it. It was absolutely incredible. And at first, we thought the journey was just this 57-year-old guy after stage 4 cancer. Could he even do this? That was my question. Could I even do this?
That's a
And
big
3 days
question for
into
anyone.
it's a big question, right? But 3 days into this, God had already put so many people in our path that we were sharing our story with, and we were hugging them, and people were slipping us 20 bucks, 100 bucks. "Here, this is for gas in your RV." And we're like, "What is going on here? This is amazing." And basically, what I realized was it was way more of a God story and what was gonna happen on this event than could this guy do this physically. I can push myself and do it, but now it's bigger than me, and it's how many people can we tell about it while we're going across the country, tell our stories to, and bring to Jesus.
Do you have any, memories of anyone in particular that you guys met?
Thousands, thousands and thousands, and one after another, and at a restaurant, and people buying our food because they heard our story, and it was just insane. A woman at a laundromat, before we crossed from California to Arizona on the border little town, we went in a laundromat, did our laundry. There was a lady in there who, you would think she's flat broke and homeless. And we're just smiling with her and laughing with her, and sharing some food with her. And we were talking while we were doing our laundry. And she handed something to Hannah. And we really didn't pay attention. We were just having so much fun, and just spending time with her and prayed with her. And then we get to the RV and we're folding clothes. And I said, "What did she hand you?" And Hannah said, I think it was a note or something." And she opens it up and it was $300.
Oh.
Lady
And
who
where
we
did she
thought
just get
was
that from?
she had money. She lived a lifestyle. She lived in a home right in that little town. She had money, but when you look at her, you would think she did. She had money. We just thought she didn't. And she handed Hannah $300 bills. So to think about how somebody in a situation, and how many times have we went in thinking, "Oh, it's this situation," and it's not at all. It's not at all. Oh, it's a lesson in itself. And there was another in, San Antonio, Texas, and I drop Hannah off at the restaurant while I go to the back of the parking lot and park the RV, and then I came back and she's standing there talking to a lady, and the lady was homeless, was just diagnosed with cancer. And Hannah, if you've seen Hannah was always clean and classy and beautiful, and here's Hannah in this crazy embrace with this homeless woman, praying with her. And I'll never forget it because all of those walls that Hannah would say, "Go wash your hands, Chuck. Go, tidy up." Here she is, and all those walls came down, and she was hugging this homeless person that was just diagnosed with cancer. There's so many stories across the country that I really think that someday, and I've been approached by the movie industry, but when I had to have some time, I want to sit down, and it's either going to be a documentary about this 3,000-mile bike ride across the country, or the 3,000-mile bike ride is going to be a few chapters in the next book, because it's such a mind-blowing situation.
Were you a bicyclist? before you
Not before the
undertook?
bike ride across the country. I bought my first road bike 6 months before that bike ride and started training on.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I ride with my son, I ride by myself. I love it. I love it. I love the Phoenix weather. To jump out there on that bike and to go for a ride, is absolutely incredible. And if I've got a little hour break here and there, I love being on it. I swim, I go to the gym or I work out in my backyard, and I bike. I bike a couple times a week. So yeah, it's something
That's
I fell in love
fantastic.
with and I still do.
I was just thinking that the same thing, that that's your next book, but I love the idea of a movie because visuals are very powerful. You know, it'll immerse them into your story in a very impactful way. That would be really exciting.
Yeah, and it's funny because every time I think I should sit down and spend some time writing a book, God tells me that this portion is not over yet, so don't write it yet because he's gonna write an ending that will blow the whole world's mind.
Mm. Oh my gosh. I bet he will. He's got some surprises. He's not done with you yet.
I know, and you're watching this, Karen. You're watching this because what just happened? I went to Portugal last year and do a hike to clear my mind, and on a hike in Portugal, meet a girl from Italy. I'm blown away. The conversation over the next 7 days enough to even feel my heartbeat again for the first time since my wife passed away 2.5 years ago, and it kind of scared me. And I was like, "Ooh, how do you love again? How do you let yourself love again after going through such a you know, a traumatizing situation?" And I prayed about it. We stayed in touch. And I just got back from spending a month in Italy with a beautiful young lady that God put in my life, who we prayed together and we cried together and we laughed together and we danced in the kitchen when we're cooking dinner. And talk about a God of healing and restoration is absolutely
Mm.
uh, beau- beautiful and unbelievable.
What a gift. Yeah, that would be another question. Like, that would be very hard to open up your heart again and to have that surprise. How did you guys meet? Because I don't think her English is very strong, right? Didn't you meet on a hike or something? How did that happen?
Yeah, we were both hiking something called the Camino del Santiago,
Oh, I've heard
which
about it. Mhm.
there's 6 treks, and we picked a trek that starts in Portugal, and goes up the coastline into Santiago. And on day 3 of me going for my own personal reasons, her going for her own personal reasons, on day 3, we actually meet, just become friends, start talking. And over the next couple days, the conversation was interesting enough to go, I want to hang out with her. She's really cool. And by the end of the Camino, we both felt our heart beating, and God's orchestrating something right now that I just can't even imagine. And right now, I have a beautiful girlfriend in Italy.
Incredible. So you were walking and just getting to know each other on this journey?
It's a pilgrimage. You're actually hiking, you're walking in the footsteps of Saint James. It's where Saint James went and he preached after Jesus went to heaven. And in the footsteps of Saint James, there's 6 different treks, 6 different trails that go from France and parts of Spain and parts of Portugal and end up in Santiago, Spain. Santiago means Saint James. Camino del Santiago means the way of Saint James or the footsteps of St. James. So we're going there to do this spiritual trek because my wife passed away, because I coach cancer people. My life is really hard if you look at it. And it's like every once in a while it catches up with me. And it's like, I need a break. What do you do? And my buddy's like, you need a Camino. And I looked it up and I was like, yes, I need a Camino. And so I start planning this hike. And it's the one I picked is it takes 12 days and you're averaging about 15 to 16 miles a day walking with a backpack on your back. And so it's not easy, it's challenging. You're meeting other people that are there for their own spiritual reasons, and you conversations and a lot of hugs and a lot of tears and a lot of prayers, and then your own spiritual time and time alone chatting with God. And God has a much bigger plan than I ever imagined. And like I said, on day 3, I meet a girl named Vanya from northern Italy.
Did God have a special word for you during this journey?
It was a couple words. He actually said blind faith. Blind faith. You're going to go to a country you've never been to before. You're going to do a hike you don't even know if you can do 15 miles a day. You're going to be in places around people you've never seen before. And all I want you to do is trust me and step out there in blind faith.
And boy, did he surprise you. I love it. Well, they say God is in the mountains. Well, God's everywhere, but there's a special place where, when people go on a pilgrimage like this, they're looking for something.
It started out as a Christian pilgrimage because when St. James was put to death, they buried him in Santiago. Christians would trek there in prayer and then pay homage to the grave of St. James. It started out as a Christian trek, but over the next 1500 years, it just became the thing to do. And so all these young kids these days are going to go do a Camino. And they're like, I'm going to go do a Camino. Have you done a Camino? Do you know about a Camino? And this just became this thing to 200,000 people do a Camino every year. And most of them don't even know what the background behind the Camino is. They're just doing this trek. And so I was excited when I was going to do this because I knew I was going to be walking in the footsteps of St. James. So I was jazzed about that in the first place. But now, yeah, I've talked to plenty of people that weren't Christians, and by the end of the conversation or by the end of the Camino, if I stayed in touch with them, I had people looking at me or calling me saying, "Chuck, where do I get a Bible?"
And people are speaking different languages. So how did you
Oh,
and your girlfriend
all over the world.
communicate?
A lot of people speak English and they learn English in school as young kids. A lot of them actually, from TV and from YouTube and things like that. And then also, if they don't speak any English or very little English, you always have Google Translate on your phone, and you can translate any language you want and communicate and have a conversation with somebody that doesn't speak English or you don't speak their language. And there was plenty of times where I didn't speak French, German, Italian, um, Japanese. There was people I ran into, but had a conversation with them due to modern technology.
Yeah, it's like, just a minute. I think you're
Yeah,
pretty."
yeah. Oh, no, me and Vanya had dinner, and we were actually, beyond what we could carry on a conversation my no Italian, her little bit of English, and there's a lot of Spanish words in Italian. I didn't know that, and I speak a little bit of Spanish, so I could hear and listen to a few things that she was talking about, but as soon as we got too deep in the conversation, we'd say, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute." I would say it into this Google Translate, hand her the phone. She would read it, say something in Italian, hand it back to me. We had dinner handing the phone back and forth. That's how we had our conversation that night.
That is incredible. That is so exciting. For the person who is watching this video, what would be your advice to embracing life, getting up and living? What would your recommendation be for them as a first step?
So basically, when you say as a first step, that's kind of hard because first steps are the hardest, and they've got to be baby steps in something that everybody can comprehend, something they can actually see themselves doing. And so, and when it comes to everything that I've seen my entire life, all of the big problems, all of the medium sized problems, all of the little teeny problems that don't seem like much, but may be a lot to somebody, the solution to every single one of these problems through my own journey was a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And what that means is you start that relationship by having a little conversation with Him while you're getting ready for bed at night, brushing your teeth, while you're driving to work. You're sitting there in traffic, and normally you got your radio turned up, and you turn your radio down and you said, "Hey, God, I don't even know if you exist, and I don't know if this is gonna work or not, but you know what? I'm having a lot of problems with my marriage, with my relationships, with my jobs, with something in my life, and if you exist, help me out here." And it starts little baby steps, and they see things start to happen, and they start to feel things in their heart they never felt before. And I'm not kidding you, and I'm not just saying this as some dude that's some kind of a holy roller, because I wasn't. I was a troublemaker in my day, but now I found Jesus, and now I know that it's the solution to every single problem out there, every single problem that I have. If you give it to God and let Him walk you through it, you will see light like you've never seen before. You will see smiles like you've never seen before. And it's all because of not religion, not checking the boxes. I did this, I did this, I did this, and I'm doing good because the church said I had 15 things that I needed to do to be a good Christian. Jesus died on the cross and already paid the price for us. All you got to do is establish a personal relationship with him in your own time, in your own way, in your own conversations with him. And that is everything. That is everything. I could sit here and give you advice about 15 different topics because of my personal experiences as an inspirational speaker, as a published author, as somebody that's traveling around the world. I could give you advice about so many topics right now based on wisdom that I've acquired through life. And the number one experience that I had that changed my life and that made me a complete different person was a personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
And I've heard that before too, from other people who share their stories with me that when they've gotten to that place and they need to know, they have literally just called out to God and said, "Show me." And he shows up.
And once he shows up, you will never be the same.
I'm so thankful for that. Regardless of what we're going through in our life, that is something to really treasure. What are your plans now? You're gonna continue with your foundation and your website. How can people, connect with you and see everything that you have going on?
So the best way is to go to the foundation. The foundation is actually called Living Hope Cancer Foundation, but it was kind of long, and we had a little catchphrase that everybody loves when we would say, "Get up and live, get up and live."
It's
Everything
easy to
around me
remember.
here in the office, everything in the office is "Get up and live." All of my stickers are "Get up and live." All of my tattoos are "Get up and live." All of the on the signage on the side of my RV out there is "Get up and live." So getupandlive.org became the easiest thing for people to remember, write down. They go on it once, they save it. Get Up and Live has a ton of content on it. It has anything from an 8-day Bible plan for any kind of healing that you want to need to go through. You might not have cancer, you need to heal from something else. There's an 8-day Bible plan on there about healing. There's 66 videos about cancer coaching, 66 free videos on there. There's also an area called your own personal fight, and that gets into the oils and the juicing and the botanicals and the things that God put on the face of this earth. You can also see all of the media stuff that we've done over the last, 7 years. A lot of it's on there. If you can also you could that's where you can find me. That's where you can get in touch with me. That's where you can leave me a message. At the bottom of the website is my personal information, so that you can leave a question, a comment. I need to get in touch with you. I need to talk to you about this. A lot of people are seeing the foundation, can't believe we're loving on cancer people and want to become a part of that. So they'll go to getupandlive.org just to donate to help us keep our lights on, put gas in the RV to get to the next location to do a speaking event. So all of the things happen through getupandlive.org. It's all there. I encourage you to go there and watch some of the videos, look around on there. If you don't have cancer, you might want to just keep healthy and improve your health. And there's ways to do that on there as well. But it's just a really cool landing place for all these things. There's a store there that have all my books in it, some
Mhm.
shirts, some bracelets that we call love taps. That's a good way to, you get a $1 bracelet called a love tap. You walk out of your house every day with one or two of these in your pocket, and you get to hand somebody a bracelet that's having a crappy day, put a smile on their face, and the bracelet takes you to a website that starts out all about spreading love, smiles, and hugs. And you can also find my foundation, Get Up and Live, through the menu on that as well. So it's just a busy time for me. And it's like, I've got my marching orders. God said, this is the direction you're going in. So the foundation is growing leaps and bounds, and we're helping thousands of people. And we want to just keep doing what we're doing. And we hope that everybody that stumbled onto this podcast today, it was no accident that you are here with us. It is no accident that you just heard this message. But keep in touch. Keep in touch. And pray for us in our journey, because we are praying for you.
Absolutely. I think I even saw a little stuffed Jack's dog on your store too. We didn't talk about Jack's, but if you're watching this video, go check out Chuck's website and you're gonna see the sweetest pupperoonie.
We had Jack's duplicated as into a little stuffed animal called Jack's for Hope, and we've sent out over 600 of them to cancer patients around the country, and we're still sending them out today, just to make somebody smile when they're going through one of the toughest journeys of their life.
Oh gosh, that makes me think of the children's hospitals. Thank you, Chuck. You are just an inspiring, warm, encouraging person, just full of multiple lifetimes of knowledge. And I just so appreciate you taking the time to share your story and your advice.
So much for inviting me on here to share this with all the people that you have following your podcast.
Oh, thank you, Chuck. Would you like to close us out in prayer for the viewer?
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. Whew. Well, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this moment right now today. Thank you for this moment that we don't really know what we're going to say on these podcasts, but the Holy Spirit pipes through us and the message goes out, and somebody watching this podcast is getting the message right now. So we want to thank you for your plan. Me and Karen didn't know what we were going to talk about in depth on this podcast today, but you knew about it. You had this plan when we were knitted together in our mother's womb. We want to thank you for the friendship between me and Karen and how we met. We want to thank her for what she's doing now to get this message and this information out to masses of people. We want to thank you for your plans. We want you to wrap your arms around people that are going through cancer or any health ailment, even the mental health. Wrap your arms around them. And I always pray that there's somebody out there right now that's lost like I was, that's looking for you. And maybe today would be the day that they meet you and they find their way. And we ask for all these prayers in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. That was fantastic. Thank you, Chuck.